I get emails every day. I get emails from all kinds of people who want to know more. I try my best to respond as much as possible, but I do have a life. I do have a family. I do have other responsibilities. And I can't always respond to everybody, but I try my best. Well, I got this one email from this Steve Bachman guy. And he more or less said, I've been following the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, and I think you and somebody else that I've come across are legit, and everybody else I don't really know about, but I think you're legit. I think you probably get a lot of emails from a lot of people. I'd be surprised if you even read my email. But if you do, I just want to let you know that I think you're the real deal. He told me about himself, about how he's a contractor, how he refurbishes antique tractors, and he just really came across to me as the salt of the earth type of guy, real genuine guy, a really nice guy, not stuck on himself. And then he shared with me that not only does he remodel and refurbish old tractors, but he shared at the end, because he attached a picture, he said, and I took Tesla's design and I made an electromagnetic pulsating device. Keep in mind, I lost Robert Golka, remember, the engineer, the physicist that used to work with MIT who wanted to kill the Squatches. Do you remember that? And I'm back to square one, and I need to put together a team to create a shunt. Then all of a sudden this Steve Bachman guy writes me out of the blue, and he tells me about how he's handy with his hands and how he created this device. And he says, I know you probably aren't going to write me back, or I just wanted to let you know. Well, hey, that all got my attention. So I called him back, which really surprised him. And I said, why don't you come join me and Mike Kincaid, and we'll go out to Soya. But I don't want you to bring out your machine. I don't want that machine. I just want you to come out and meet my family. I want them to get to know you. Well, then about a day or two before it was time to go, I always follow up with everybody just to make sure that they have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed and they have everything they need, because it kind of sucks if you travel hundreds or thousands of miles and you forget something. So I was on the phone with Steve, making sure they had everything he needed, he wasn't going to forget something. And he said, hey, can I at least bring my device so I can show it to you and show it to Mike and talk you through it? We don't have to fire it up. I just want to show it to you. I said, okay, Steve, go ahead and bring your device. So he drove down from Buckley, Washington, and we met Mike at the Black Bear Diner in Grants Pass, Oregon. And Mike Kincaid, this is Mike Kincaid here. He's not here tonight. Steve's here tonight. You're going to hear from Steve, but Mike's not here tonight. Mike Kincaid works for the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine. He's one of their computer gurus. He's been working with them for over 20 years. And he's the head of their financial system at the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine. In other words, Mike is a very smart guy. Okay? So we have Mr. Smart Guy with Mr. Salt of the Earth, with Dr. Crazy. Okay? Balancing everything out. And on day one, at the Southern Oregon Interaction Area, Soya, we set up camp. and there's Steve's machine on the bed of his truck on the tailgate, and he's kind of showing us what's going on. There's Steve, there's Mike. There's our beds over there. We sleep out in the open, not in a tent. And that night, I sent Steve and Mike out on a trip around the perimeter of the base camp, because I wanted them to find the area that Cynthia and I found a month earlier that may be a portal area. So I sent them out in the dark of night to find that portal area, and they couldn't find anything. Well, they couldn't find anything because we didn't go to the Oregon House of Mystery, the Oregon Vortex. We didn't bring back any juju, so I knew they weren't going to find anything. Well, that night, while we were sleeping, we got woken up because Zorth, and that's not really Zorth, that's just a picture of a squatch to give you an idea, started stomping his 26-inch feet to chase off a black bear who wanted to come into our camp. And the black bear growled at him and came closer, so Zorth stomped his feet again, and the black bear turned and ran away. Once again, 26-inch feet. When you hear 26-inch feet stomping the ground, it's going to wake you up. And it woke the three of us up, and it was very amazing in the pitch dark of night. After it happened, Zorth walked back to the perimeter. I saw his upper chest, his shoulders, his head, glowing red eyes. And in my mind, I asked, "You're keeping us safe, right?" And he said, "Yes, that was me. You're safe. You can go back to sleep." Well, when we processed that in the morning, Steve Bachman said, "You guys haven't heard anything." Because all night long, he had healing hands on him from the Bigfoot Forest People that were working his body from feet to head and head to feet. Steve was receiving a healing from them, which I think he might take a minute or two to talk about when he comes up toward the end of my talk. So he's going, this stomping thing from Zorth is nothing. I had hands on my body all night long, healing me. Day 2, I take Mike and Steve to the Oregon Vortex, the House of Mystery, to get the juju. And then we go back to camp that night, and this time they actually find the area that Cynthia and I found a month earlier. Now this is not an actual picture of the area. This is just a Google representation of the area. Okay, that's not an actual picture of the area. But they found the area, and Matt, is this it? I'm like, yep, yeah, that's the same area that Cynthia and I spotted. And while we're standing there, enjoying this energy, this light, all of a sudden we hear this 900-pound owl going off on top of the hill 100 feet higher to us to our right. Okay, the elevation's about 100 feet higher. When I say 900-pound owl, I'm talking about a Bigfoot that is imitating an owl. With big lungs. But it wasn't just imitating an owl, it was going it was like, what the heck? Owl? A dog? What the heck's going on? And it kept doing this for about 5 minutes, and we're just standing there looking at this fog of light, hearing this 900-pound owl going off 100 feet above us, totally blown away by the whole experience. And then finally the sound stopped. We went back to base camp, sat down in the chairs in the dark, and Mike and Steve are like, let's go up there right now. And I'm about to say, okay, let's go. But Zorth, the head clan leader, the head of the Council of 12, he mind speaks with me and he says, no, don't come up tonight. But But you're welcome to come up tomorrow night and sit before the council of 12.
Oh, wow.
Please tell your friends. So I tell Steve and Mike, nope, Zorth doesn't want us to come up tonight. He wants us to come up tomorrow night and sit before the council of 12. And they're like, council of 12? Wow, that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. So we're like, okay, we won't go up tonight. We'll go up tomorrow night. So the next day we go off the mountain, day 3, and we see some sights. We get back up to camp, and I'm tired because I've been driving all day as the host. So I need a power nap. So I say, wake me up at 8:45 because it'll still give us enough daylight to take our chairs and get up to the mountain. So let me have this power nap and wake me up at 8:45. Mike Kincaid said he'd wake me up, so I went to sleep for this power nap. Well, as soon as I hit my cot, I had this vision. I was thrusted into a vision. And in this vision, I was flying 100 to 200 feet over this lush green forest. I'm flying and I'm flying and I'm flying over this lush green forest. And then I move over to the coastline over this lush green forest, and I'm flying up the coastline over this lush green forest, and I see the blue sea and the blue sky, and it's just awesome. But I'm not in this vision, I'm not seeing any signs of humanity. I'm not seeing any roads, any houses, just lush green forest and the coastline, blue ocean. No signs of humanity. And then all of a sudden the sky starts turning red, and I'm thinking the sun is going down. But then I hear a voice tell me, that's our home world. Our planet is dying. We need your help. We need a shot. And then I go from that to dreaming. Eventually I'm woken up by Mike and Steve, and we go to the top of the hill, 100 feet higher than the base camp. And I tell them where we need to set up our chairs. It's not in the best viewing area, so I'm asked, make sure that's where they're supposed to be. And I asked Zorth, and Zorth said, yes, that's where I want your chairs to be. So we set our chairs up there. And then we're sitting in the dark because the sun's gone down. And Zorth takes me on a stroll down memory lane. And he takes me back to a memory where I'm with Lori Simmons in the northern Cascades in the state of Washington. And we're at her research area. And in her research area, there's this big tree where she calls Big Guy, who she thinks is living under the ground below this tree. So we get there, and I convince her to get up the hill and around the tree, which she's never done because she's totally afraid. But I get her around, and I have my parabolic microphone dish with me, and I'm recording everything. So we get up the hill around the other side of the tree. She's standing on a log. She doesn't want to get on the ground. I'm recording everything. And I put my arm around her waist, and I gently pull her off the log that she's standing on onto the ground to get her close to the tree. Well, as a result, her anxiety shoots up through the roof because she's scared to death to be there. Well, because her anxiety is shooting up through the roof, the tree growls at me. I have it recorded. If you go to soundcloud.com and you type in Team Squatching USA and you look up Lori Simmons, or you go back to July of 2014, you'll hear it. You'll hear the audio recording. The tree growls at me. I'm like, whoa! Well, Lori hears it growling, and she starts, oh, I'm okay, big guy. Are you okay? Are you okay, big guy? I love you, big guy. And all of a sudden the tree is going boom, 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 boom. But I'm listening and I'm recording, and the noise actually isn't coming from below the tree. The noise is coming from inside the tree. Not below, inside the tree. So I said, Lori, I want to do an experiment. so don't think I'm putting a move on her. She said, okay. So I gently put my arm around her waist and I pull her closer to the tree. Well, she's scared again, right? Her anxiety shoots up the roof. The tree growls at me again. Because it doesn't like the fact that I'm making her anxious. I'm moving her closer to the tree. Well, she hears it growl and she's like, oh, I'm okay, big guy, and starts sweet talking big guy. And then it goes from growling to boom, 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 boom. Once again, go to soundcloud.com. Type in Team Squatching USA. Go listen to the audio recording yourself. I have all my recordings, including the ones you heard earlier, right there for your listening pleasure. I don't lie, I don't hoax. Everything I say is backed up with circumstantial evidence. So we're sitting up there on the hill, it's dark, and Zorth runs me through this memory with Lori Simmons, and then Zorth runs me through this memory with John Eric Beckjord. 17 years ago, when my family first came across a Bigfoot up on the mountain above the Oregon Caves, John Eric Beckjord would call me 25 to 50 times a day in my private practice office. Okay, this guy was a member of Mensa. He was very smart, very intelligent, but like most people who are really, 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 really smart and really, really intelligent, Mensa material, most of them are socially inept. Most of the really smart people are really stupid when it comes to social interactions, okay? They don't know how to relate to their fellow humans. And he was not an exception to the rule. He would call me up 25 to 50 times a day, send multiple emails, and my secretary was really mad at him and hang up on him. Occasionally he would disguise his voice, get past her. I would pick up the phone and then he would be yelling at me, "They're in the trees, Matt! They're in the trees!" And I would say, "Dude, you need to get back on your medication. Quit calling me or else I'm going to hire an attorney and I'm going to sue you for harassment and for stalking." Eventually he backed off. But nevertheless, Zorth ran me through my memories while we were sitting up there in the hill in the dark about Lori Simmons and the Northern Cascades. Bump, 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 and growls. And Eric Beckjord calling me up saying they're in the trees. And then Zorth asked me in the dark, count the trees from your left to your right. So in my mind, I'm quiet, I'm counting the trees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Zorth said, count them again, please. So I count them in the dark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then Zorth said, we are beings of light. We are the orbs. And we're in the trees. Now, this is Samara. She's here tonight. She and her husband Kevin, and you heard Kevin, the Irishman, talk a little earlier about being at tomorrow's VIP dinner. They were with me at Soya. They visited the area. They have a lot to talk about. Samara was up on the hill where the Council of 12 were. She was taking random pictures. She connected with this tree. She took a picture of the tree. Do you see the eyes, the nose, and the mouth? You see the face right here? Okay? We're in the trees. So Zorth said, we are the orbs, we are beings of light, and we're in the trees. Okay? And he said, during the day we're in the trees so we can soak up the energy from the sun and the nutrients through the roots in the ground. Okay? So during the day, we're in the trees soaking up the energy from the sun and the nutrients from the ground. And then they come out and play at night when the sun's not there. And by the way, This gentleman in Western New York, the state of New York, sent me this picture. You see that right there? Random shot in the forest in Western New York. Do you see that right there? You see that?
Yeah.
We're in the trees. And then I got this picture from a gentleman in England, from Britain, who was out at night researching. He caught this orb. In the next picture, he caught this orb transitioning into a Bigfoot. So he was taking pictures, and it was an orb, and then it was starting to transition into a full-figured being, Bigfoot, that he saw walk away. And then I just got this picture this morning from a gentleman out of North Carolina who has a trail cam on his property. And these trees right here, he had this unusual light phenomenon that happened on his trail cam associated with these trees. And then he caught on another day this squatch walking toward these trees, right? And then he caught this cougar walking toward these trees. This all makes sense, right? I'll tell you in just a bit. We're in the trees. Okay, we're in the trees. We are the orbs, we're beings of light. We can become anything we want to be, and they transition into a squatch. We're in the trees. We've got this light phenomenon going on. We've got the squatch walking toward the trees, and we have a cougar walking toward the trees. Pay attention to that. Zorth told me we are the guardians of the forest and we protect all who dwell within. Then Zorth said, we came over to Earth during the time of your dinosaurs. I want you to hear this. The Bigfoot Forest People have been on Earth longer than we've been on Earth. So, who does the planet belong to? Okay, they've been here longer than we have. They exist on all 6 habitable continents. They do not exist on Antarctica. Nothing exists on Antarctica. Okay? And he shared we're in the trees, and he had me have Mike and Steve count the trees afterwards to themselves, and Mike, 12, Steve, 12. Okay, Zorth's asking me to have you count again just to make sure. They count to themselves. Mike, how many? 12. Steve, how many? 12. And all of a sudden, Mike and Steve are simultaneously saying, they're in the trees. I want you to keep in mind the previous night when Zor said, come up here and sit before the Council of 12. We were all expecting to sit before 12 upright bipedal hairy squatches, right? We weren't expecting to be in front of 12 trees. That was not our idea at the Council of 12. We're in the trees. I counted, Mike counted, Steve counted, they're in the trees. We went back down to the base camp, we were excited. Steve said, why don't I just fire up the machine? So we did. That third night there, we fire up Steve's machine. Steve has 2 deep cycle marine batteries that act as one. They're funneled through this inverter with a meter reader there that goes to this wheel that spins with 16 powerful magnets. This creates energy that kicks it back to the inverter and back to the batteries. And in theory, the batteries never drain because they produce energy. The energy is produced, kicked back to the batteries, and the batteries never drain. And in addition to the batteries never draining through this looping cycle of energy, the wheel is producing free energy, free electromagnetic energy. See this box to the right here? It's right there. Steve brought it here tonight. So you'll have an opportunity to check it out a little later. When you check it out, if you have a pacemaker or an insulin pump, you might want to back up to the back of the room. Okay? If you choose to come forward after I just warned you, that's on you. But I would encourage anyone with a pacemaker or an insulin pump to get to the back of the room. Don't be up next to the machine when Steve fires it up. I will also tell you that the casing seems to kind of minimize the output of the energy, because when Steve would fire that machine up without this casing, you could feel that energy from quite a ways away, just pulsating off the machine. So this was a Tesla design that Steve actually created and made a reality. So, pretty impressive device. So we fired it up that night. Steve was tired, Steve went to bed, he had to drive home the next morning to Buckley, Washington, because he had some commitments he needed to fulfill. Part of Steve's reputation is that he always delivers on time. You have a lot of contractors out there who are always late. Steve's not one of them. Steve delivers on time. He prides himself on delivering on time or early, but never late. So we fired it up that night. He had to leave the next morning. He went to bed because he had to drive. Eventually the machine was screaming at Mike and I. We had to turn it off. The inverter was screaming because the batteries were drained. We talked with Steve about that later on. Steve said, that's impossible. Batteries never drain. I have run that over and over at the shop at my house. The batteries never drain. He turned it on and saw that the meter actually showed that the batteries were drained, which was very perplexing. Well, he had to go home, right? Because he had his commitment to fulfill. But he generously allowed Mike and I to keep the inverter and the wheel and to run it the following night, because that third night when we actually ran this for an hour and a half, Zorth told me it's working. And we got 2,350 souls through in an hour and a half from our home world to Earth. And he said, that's 10% of what we need to get through. And I said, 10%? That means there's only like 23,500 souls to get through. That's not even the size of the population of Grants Pass, Oregon. And Zor said, yeah, you're right. But he said, you need to understand that our sun has been dying for a long time. A really long time. And you need to understand that we would go to these measures even if it meant saving only one of our souls, one of our family or friends. So, okay, I get it. It's fine. Well, Steve had to go home. And he agreed to allow Mike and I to hang on to the machine because I was going to go back to Puyallup a couple of days later for the 4th of July weekend with Cynthia. And so Mike and I went into Grants Pass, Oregon, and Mike invested over $600 of his own money, and we bought extra deep cycle marine batteries and chargers. Mike spent about $600 of his own money. Mike was on board to make this whole Exodus thing happen. So Steve drove home, Mike was there, Mike spent his money, we got the equipment, we charged it up, and then we went back for the last night, Mike, myself, and my 10-year-old son Grady. So we're there up in Soya. We've already helped 2,350 souls approximately come through the portal, but we still have about 20,000 souls left to go. So we're there, and we back the truck up into the cove, and it gets dark, and there's orbs everywhere. Remember? We're the orbs, we're beings of light. Eventually, I tuck Grady in, and Grady tells me, Dad, they're everywhere. I can hear them, I can see them, and I'm putting him in his sleeping bag, and there's this orb right by his leg that we're both looking at. And it comes from his ankle up to his knee, up to his thigh, then it takes off about 15 feet up in the air, it hangs up there for a few seconds, and then it zips away. And Grady's like, Dad, did you just see that? I said, yep. And he goes, that was so cool. And I said, dude, you're not going to forget this, right? You're going to remember tonight for the rest of your life, right? And he said, yep, Dad, I'm always going to remember this night. So Grady goes to bed, Mike and I are still awake. There's orbs everywhere. There's footsteps everywhere. There's visuals everywhere. And Zorth is still mind speaking with me. And he tells me they're bringing 4,000 through an hour. 4,000 souls an hour. They're doubling their capacity. And I said, how are you doing this? And he said, well, we were listening to you guys talk when you were trying to figure out why your batteries drained. And we didn't realize that we weren't supposed to take the energy from the batteries. We didn't realize we were only supposed to take the energy from the machine. So we decided to leave the batteries alone. And you caught us off guard the first night. So we talked during the day while you were off the mountain, and we got a kind of a fire brigade, forest people on this side of the portal to do the energy run and to keep the portal open, but we also sent several through the portal to get everyone ready on the other side so they can come back. So he said, you guys caught us off guard, but we were better prepared. Now, interesting enough, when Mike and I, the second night, ran the machine and the batteries, the portal, the electromagnetic pulsating device, okay? The batteries that second night, the same batteries that Steve provided the first night, that we recharged, those batteries never drained. They drained the first night, but they never drained the second night. Why didn't they drain the second night? Well, because Zor said they were listening to us and they left the batteries alone on the second night. So we used the same batteries that drained the first night after an hour and a half. We used the same recharged batteries the second night for over 5 hours, and they were still fully charged at the end of 5 hours. Orbs everywhere, backed into the truck. The next morning, Mike and Cade, Grady and I were still sleeping. And Mike was woken up early in the dark. He's laying there on his cot out in the open underneath the stars. All of a sudden, out in the trees, whack, whack, whack. Tree knocks, tree pops. It ends up, Mike hears 12 of them. Not 11, not 13, 12 of them. You see, Mike is our computer nerd. He's our debugger. He's like my fiance, Cynthia. They're very intelligent, and they're in their heads. It's not a put down. It's just who they are. They're very intelligent computer nerds. And they analyze everything, and they go over everything with a fine-tooth comb. That's the way they're made. That's the way they're wired. And they're problem solvers. And Mike had a difficult time going from his head to his heart. So he's laying there that morning wondering if everything that just happened actually just happened. And they wake him up while leaving Grady and I asleep, just for him to give him 12 knocks. Not 11, not 13, 12. And Mike goes, I get it. That's for me. The Council of 12. It really happened. So Mike's up out of his cot while Grady and I are still sleeping. He goes up the logging road. He's jumping, laughing, skipping, crying. He has a born-again experience because they spoke to him to give him what he needed to understand that what he experienced was actually real. Now for me, after the whole Exodus occurred, after we brought over 23,542 souls, minus the 3 souls that died within an hour or less of coming over, after 16 years, I was free. And I asked Zorth, I'm free, right? I'm free from this compulsion, this obsession to come back out here as often as I do. I'm free, right? I'm good to go. And he goes, yes, you're free. He said, however, we would still like you to remain on board as a teacher to our children, if you're willing to do so. And we would like you to remain as an ambassador, to share with others about us, to share with the world about who we are. We would like you to teach our children and to share with others if you're willing to do so. And then Kevin, who you saw earlier, and who you'll see tomorrow if you come to the VIP dinner at Nancy and Joel's place. Kevin was up there along with Samara and Soya. Kevin was out on his own walking through the trees and apparently had a conversation with a tree. Remember, we're in the trees. And he came back into camp and I'm sitting there and I had yet to tell him about the Exodus. And he's sitting there and he said, he was talking with a tree. And I'm going, yeah, right. And like, I'm still having a little bit of a challenge taking this all in, right? And he's sitting there saying he's talking with a tree. And the tree was telling him about 12 or 13. You're 13. Okay? Council of 12, right? And we want you to be our ambassador, telling other people about us. You're 13. And Kevin had no clue about the Exodus. Still has no clue. So he talked with the tree up on the 9 o'clock hill that told him about 12 and 13 without knowing anything about the Exodus. Now, Zorth was telling me that next morning after the Exodus, he said, by the way, that encounter at the cave 7 or 16 years ago, he said, that was me. The Bigfoot that you went into with your family 16 years ago. That was me. Welcome home. And then he said, you are now free to write your book. It's a 444-page book. I got it cranked out in less than a